Hey everyone. Okay, so the other day I had talked, the last couple times I've talked about identity. I addressed it from the perspective of really a lot of really calm, mild, controlled, be loving, be compassionate, be forgiving, things that seem very almost from a place of rest. And yet, that is true, absolutely true, all good. I stand by by what I said. But there's also times when we are in actually like a fierce battle. It might be a night, a day, or it could be weeks, it could be months, there could be even a time where it's years. I had a battle for years after Rocky died to heal from that, to get resettled, figure out what I was doing, and find my place in this world, and figure out who I was. And the identity piece has been huge for me. Then there's been times where I've had to really fight in just moments, right? And I'll share a couple times about that in a minute, but I want to share a couple scriptures. Starting in Ephesians 6:10, that you guys probably, a lot of you know, is putting on the armor of God. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So therefore, put on the armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Okay, and it goes on and it talks about, you have to have the belt of truth around your waist, the breastplate of righteousness, your feet fitted with the readiness with the gospel of peace, take up the shield of faith, helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit. And I'm kind of racing through that because the sentence here that I really want to focus on is, therefore put on the full armor of God. So we have to have this on all the time. We need it a lot, right? So that when the day of evil comes, because it's basically saying you're getting ready. It's not if, it's when. And you may have a small battle, you might have a large battle, but you need to have the armor of God on so that when it comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. So it's really I don't know that the word is, I'm losing the word, but it's really emphasizing. There we go. It's really emphasizing that you're gonna have this battle, and you have to be able to stand. And then after you've done everything, like after you've done all that you can do, to still be able to stand. So it's like indicating that this could be really, really, really tough, right? So that's the one scripture I want to share. And then I'm going to bring this all together in a minute. Daniel 3 talks about when King Nebuchadnezzar created this image of gold for everyone to worship. And he demanded that when they played an instrument, the flute, the lyre, harp, pipes, whatever it was, that people had to worship this image. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who served the king, refused to do that. And he threatened to throw them in the furnace. And they said, and what he said to them is, if you do not worship, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? And they replied to him, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. So here's the thoughts that I have had as I stand by my previous words that I have said. You have to have gentleness, meekness, self-control. You have to have all of these things, and you have to be loving and kind and compassionate. All these things that would require you to be really calm and cool and collected, right? But then there's also times that you take up your shield and your sword and you fight. And sometimes you have to fight really, really like you're on the front lines. And so those two thoughts, those two scriptures, if you kind of put those together, Old Testament, New Testament, you fight as if you know you're going to win. You fight as if you know, and you believe as if you know you're going to win. But you also have to be strong enough that you don't lose heart if you don't win the battle. And I'm saying that because we live in this fallen world, because God has given man a choice, because even though you might be choosing right, somebody else might not be choosing right. And it might be the calling on your life. It might be the calling on your children's lives. It might be because God has appointed a certain community, country, nation, I don't know, just there's certain reasons why he may allow something really negative to happen to bring about a greater good. And I truly believe that in Rocky's death, that is why that happened, is there's a greater thing that was going on there, that God allowed his death for that time in his life, rather than, oh, yep, they could have gone and on and served me to the end of their days, and they might have had this or that happen, but he saw fit to say, I'm going to allow this. And so I can remember thinking, literally almost right after his funeral, that I'm like, okay, I've had just enough counseling, mentoring, teaching, instruction, and truth of God in me. I have enough of it in me to survive this, but I need more. I'm going to need more help to get through this, because this is big. This is beyond what I could have ever thought could happen. I never ever dreamed I would marry somebody who would die young. It never even occurred to me. And so the enemy came up from behind and just took me out and tried to take my kids out. I mean, just going after their hearts and their lives with just different things that were just very subtle. And yet my kids, thankfully, have chosen to stay true to God. And I have done things in my life. After Rocky died, I believe there was a long season of him not showing me really where was I going to live, what was I going to do for a career, who was I really going to be. I think he allowed that time to kind of be held off, and the answers to just be delayed, because I needed to pour into my kids, and make sure they were my assignment more than anything after Rocky died, to make sure that because they didn't have a dad on this earth, that they were going to be okay, that they were going to be strong in God, and that they were going to be able to fight off the things of the world. And and my son went through way different things than my daughter did, and then their experiences with God were so totally different, that directed them to different places of their giftings. When my son went to Youth with a Mission after he graduated from high school, he got to see the most unbelievable healings, that literally someone came back from the dead. Literally, he has the story. It's incredible. It's unbelievable. He wasn't in the hospital room when that happened. He was at the base of the ministry praying specifically for this guy. And I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then healing after healing after healing that he got to witness. People that had a cane that didn't need a cane, this guy that came from back from the dead, different things happen. I mean, just over and over. It was incredible. Built his faith up, that I don't know if my kids would have ever gone to this Youth with a Mission had Rocky been alive. It would have been a factor of finances and time and energy and what we needed at the time for the business. There was a lot could have happened. I'm just saying I'm not trying to, I don't want to really speculate what could have happened, because I just know that it was very, very important for my kids to go to the Youth with a Mission. And what my son experienced, my daughter went then a year or two later. After she graduated, her experience was completely different. She had processed Rocky's death very differently. She had a lot of heart pain lot of woundings from losing her daddy so young. And what God did was just so incredible when she went to Youth with a Mission, because God just went after her heart. And I'm sorry, I'm crying because I'm just like, oh my gosh, she tells me of this one experience of they had the Father Heart of God week, and they just talked about the heart of God. And this man who was ministering to them singled her out and brought her up front. And what he said and did for her was the most healing thing that could have been done. And to show her that she still has a father in heaven who loves her beyond anything, and that she was going to be okay. And it's just like, I mean, she's telling me the story over the phone, and she's crying, of course, again, and I'm just weeping because I'm like, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have picked anything better for my kids to be built up in their faith in these totally radically different experiences, and the relationships that came out of them going there, and to this day that they have these relationships and friendships, and just incredible stuff. So that's what I'm talking about, is to be strong enough to not lose heart even if something doesn't happen, but to believe for the absolute unbelievable miracles, because God will come through in one way or another. So if he doesn't come through in the moment, he's going to come through in another way. And so when the battle is fierce, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you live with meekness and gentleness and self-control and forgiveness and love for people. But you are a warrior as well. You have your sword of the Spirit, and you are wielding it, and you are killing off the enemy, and you are tying his hands and binding him, and you are like, he doesn't get to wreak havoc in your life. And there are times when we don't do that because we're not ready for it, and we forget. And we all of a sudden we're in this war that he's got all these assignments against us. And we also, again, from the courts of heaven, when we've given him legal access by the things that we've said, by the people that we've partnered with, by not taking a stand when we should have, when we've agreed with things that we didn't really quite mean to agree with, when we were afraid to be strong and speak up, that he can have legal access and he can come in and just kick our butts. And so we have to be ready for these battles, because they will come. And in America, we just have it so easy, and we have so many choices, and we can go to different church every week, or we can not go to church, or we can do all kinds of things and have all kinds of excuses. But the reality is, if we are not really strong in God, there may come a time in our lives that we aren't ready for it, and we had better get ready. So I just want to encourage you to walk it out both ways, is to be as kind and compassionate and gentle and as sweet as you possibly can be, but be ready to take a stand whenever you do need to, because that might happen too. Okay, I think that ties it up. That wraps it up. All right, have a good one, guys.